Hello, everyone. This is Jericho Kean, and I am here with Ron Newcomb, the founder and CEO of the Forge Studios.
Hey everyone.
So first, I'd just like to say thank you for joining me today for this little interview video podcast thing. So we'll just, I guess we can just get right into the questions.
Sure.
So you call yourself the indie film coach. What kind of like things, like how does that work? Is it like a coaching program, or do you have like certain courses for people to actually take to learn more about like film, or is it just...
Yeah, it's really kind of morphed into a lot of different things. So I grew up playing sports, so I love the analogy of kind of the coach.
Yeah.
That the person is, they're on the sidelines, they know the game, they're cheering you on, they probably have played in the past. You come back off the field, they, fix you back up and send you into the fray. They also help you with knowledge, with training. Anytime I've made significant strides in my life, it's usually been under the tutelage of a mentor or some type of coach in a lot of different arenas. So I have a passion to help others, and that started when I wanted to get into filmmaking. I started to look into, now this is pre-digital, so I started to look around my area, which is the Washington, D.C. area, to see if I could find a set to help out on, almost like a pre-PA. Like I was going to literally run and get coffee and help and do as much as I could, with different things. And I couldn't even get invited onto a set. So I vowed that if that ever happens, I get the opportunity to have a set, I'm not going to do that to other people. I'm going to have an open set policy. And that doesn't mean that you just get to sit around and watch, but I invite people onto my sets and get them active. And as a result of that, I started to be invited to speak at certain institutions and colleges and high schools even. And I started to speak about the business of filmmaking. So not just the aesthetics, but how to get distribution. I've done a feature film. It has two names. Actually, our distributor changed the name to the film Rise of the Fellowship, but originally it was The Fellows Hip, Rise of the Gamers. So I was able to get that sold in Walmart and Netflix and Amazon and sold in 19 countries, and that taught me a ton. And so I started to really speak about the business side of filmmaking, and a lot of students came up and thanked me and said, wow, we've never heard the business side of things. So I kept kind of going down that road, and so it morphed into me doing a few workshops and then some formal seminars around distribution and business. I started even working on writing a book a little bit and things. But right now, where the indie film coach has kind of landed, at least for now, is I'm doing consulting. So consulting one-on-one and helping people to get their idea out into the space to get the film created. So that's the ultimate goal. But I've also realized as a coach that sometimes the best thing I can do for our area, for the people that I know, my sphere of influence, is to actually do a film. Because that's what really people want, is opportunity. And there's so much when a film happens, there's so many learning opportunities that are created that's been my goal recently. And so I've really kind of doubled down on trying to get a film into production in what we call the DMV area.
All right. Yeah. You brought up some good points, because I feel like they don't really teach a lot about the business side of it. They kind of just like give you the camera stuff and at least in my college classes and stuff. And how you mentioned the Rise of the Fellowship, that was actually the first film that I saw of yours. A friend of mine got it somewhere and showed it to me, and I thought it was pretty cool. And that's actually kind of the next question, is talking about past films you've made, the Rise of the Fellowship. And a question I kind of have is, he pointed out that you played Stan in the Rise of the Fellowship, right? And
I sure did, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the whole cameo thing was something that you like planned on doing, or if it was just like you needed someone to play the role, or had you already planned on playing that role?
So so the way I got into this whole thing is through the vehicle of acting. I love acting. I'm passionate about it. Now, recently, I'd say within the past several years, I have found a love of directing, and so I've kind of moved into directing, and still enjoy writing. Producing is just a byproduct of having to do it, but do enjoy the process of directing. But as we put out there, we saw probably 400 plus people that auditioned for various roles in the Fellowship Rise of the Gamers.
Yeah.
And Stan was certainly one that we auditioned for. And both of my business partners at the time knew that I really loved acting. And I had not said I'm definitely not going to do it, but I had also not thrown myself out there. It was basically like, we kind of have me as a default, but let's look to see if we can't find someone else. And I actually did offer the role to a young actor, and unfortunately, he had just gotten an offer in California as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he ended up, and he had already made plans to go out there, and you can imagine moving from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Yeah.
It's a lot to go into in planning. So he couldn't really put that on pause to then do my film, because we filmed over a 30-day period, so an entire month. And so I didn't set out to play Stan, but I was glad to do it. And it was my two business partners that said, because I would be the one reading with the people that were auditioning. They kind of said, hey, you really should play the part. You got it. You know it. I co-wrote it, so I knew the role. I look, I'm looking back on it, I definitely look older than like a 20 something older brother, but I'm 10 years older than my younger brother. So if Randall was supposed to be around 17, then that could put Stan at 27. So that's kind of what we're basing it on.
That makes sense. I kind of get what you're saying with the whole acting and then becoming directing. Like, I think I like all of the, like, for my films, I do most of the work.
Sure.
But I think acting and writing and stuff are definitely, I think acting's more my thing, but definitely has gotten me into all of it. So.
Yeah, that's the beauty of filmmaking, and one of the things I love is the collaborative spirit filmmaking has, and you have all these different individual art forms and artists coming together to create one piece of art, this film, this story. And I love that part of it. And why not dip into, and who wouldn't want to dip into various elements? Like on the last project I was a part of, it was a series called Daily Bread. And I really got some pretty good camera time actually being a camera operator, because we were running a couple units, 2 cameras per unit. And so there were days where I got to camera op, and that was a lot of fun. So there's a lot of things, and that's one of the things I love about filmmaking, that you can do other than just one thing. Now, certainly when you're trying to do it at a premier level, you have to hyper focus on that to build your resume and to get good at it. So, I understand with people, especially acting, that's one of those things where, if you're really trying to do it full time and professional, where people hyper focus on it and that's what they do. So I get it. But if you look at the Rodriguez's and Tarantino's and Guillermo del Toro and even Peter Jackson, a lot of times they're writing, directing, producing. So there's a lot of hats. Rodriguez does music and editing. Kevin Smith does editing and, writing and producing and directing. And he gets in front of the camera from time to time. So, I think a lot of us like to play the various elements within filmmaking.
So, on to current, projects that you're working on and things that have, inspired you in filmmaking. If you could kind of talk about that.
Oh, yeah, sure. So currently what I'm working on is I'm really trying to get some scripts knocked out. Writing is is rewriting. We all hear that, but that's also
Yeah.
the fun, is rewriting. The hard part is writing that first draft, man. That is so difficult. And I do find it's hard for me to rewrite myself. And so I brought on, so I have one project called Outlawed Faith. It's a steampunk Western sci-fi. We did a 15-minute concept piece and did a Kickstarter, raised a little bit of money for it. And we're really trying to because that's going to require a budget, a real budget. And so we're trying to bring that one to the next level. I've brought on a writer. And so I have a writer that's rewriting me right now, and then I'll pull it back in and work on the rewrite. I just wrapped up a couple weeks ago another feature film, a modern day film called Occupied America. It's set a little bit into the future. And then my third film, I'm just putting pen to paper on. This is the one, it's called Always Faithful, that I believe is most likely for me to be able to do now because the budget is not so high and so crazy. So, there's certainly things I have going on. I have a short film called The Mark in post-production that I'm trying to get off the table. And then I have another series for the Rangers. I did an episodic 60-minute pilot called The Rangers, and out of that IP, that storyline, we branched out and did a bunch of other stories. So I partnered up with a group called Felon Fair down in South Carolina. They have a great Instagram presence. You should check them out. But I partnered up with them, and we've done some short films in the world of the Rangers. And so I'm helping produce that and finish that up as well. But as far as inspirations go, there are inspirations within the films I see, and then there's inspirations within the filmmakers themselves. I mean, certainly with a geek like me, it's hard not to love what Peter Jackson, what they have going on down in New Zealand. I mean, everyone told them that no way would you be able to get something off the ground like that in New Zealand. And now look at them. They have a major studio there, and Hollywood comes to them for, I would say, most of their CGI and a lot of post-production. So that, to me, is an inspiring story. But it's hard not to not be inspired by Rodriguez and Kevin Smith and Tarantino. These guys are brilliant filmmakers, and they've done it at our level, at an indie level. They had a whole no holds barred attitude and just went for it, and they worked with what they had. So I've read a lot about those guys, and they're certainly inspiring. Guillermo del Toro and what he's been able to do is someone that, again, doesn't allow barriers to kind of keep them in check. They just push through them. And then stories I've seen that are inspiring. I mean, it's hard not to, and not to date the podcast here, but Black Panther is coming out this weekend. It's out. And so it's hard not to see a cool, epic Marvel, project like that and not be inspired as well. So,
and just try and ask another question or two, just because we're low on time. But you were talking about the Outlawed Faith, and I did see the 15-minute version. I loved it. I'm a huge steampunk fan. So a question for myself and just for other people that are fans and want to get involved, how can we get involved in your films, or if we can audition for things or come help on set?
Yeah, so my goal is to do 3 what I call intentional epic shorts. So these are not short films that you just run around with the handy cam in your backyard. These are intentional epic shorts. Something, usually I can film 5 pages a day, so something I can film in a weekend. So something at about 10 pages. And so I try to do those once a quarter. But I think right now what I'm focusing on is writing, because if I can get us some features funded and into production, there would be no greater an opportunity for me to be able to come back to everyone and say, hey, look, I'm crewing up, and here are the audition dates, and let's go for it. The train's moving. That's really what my goal is. But if you go to thefordstudios.com, sign up for my newsletter. That's one of the best ways to do it. Then another way is on Facebook. Anything that we post audition-wise, we do that. But I'm trying to do the Intentional Epic Shorts, 3 a year, and then 1 what I call long form. So that could be, anything bigger than a short. So a 30-minute, 60-minute, or a 90-minute opportunity. 90 minutes is sellable. I mean, that's really the feature film angle, and that's important to kind of go after. So I've been really hyper-focused on writing and getting those things to the next level. But, I always have something kind of in process that is in production. So I do have a short film that I'm going to be working on, and I will definitely post that through my notes or through my newsletter. So that's the best way, I think, to get a hold of me. But people can always shoot me an email. Feel free to friend me or connect with me on social media. And if people had questions or something, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap things up, do you have any advice for aspiring filmmakers or anything else you want to say to the audience?
Yeah, it's filmmaking is not a solo sport, nor is life.
Yeah.
That we are built and meant to be in community. And one of the things I love about film is that it doesn't matter about gender or age or race. It breaks down all those. Mm-hmm. If you have an affinity and you have a 60-year-old and a 6-year-old and they're in a scene together, they're both trying to create the best scene that they can make. And I love that. Don't feel that you need to do film in isolation. You can do film with others. If you're not the best writer, and we all know that story is king, then team up with great writers. So that's one thing. Another thing is I would caution people about trying to make everything just so formal and finalized and partner up with people that you don't really know. I've lost friends along the way, unfortunately, just through, not being clear on stuff, or people's creative visions are different. And do it. Let's learn what Hollywood does. And the way they do it is they create a company around one film, right? And that one film has a life of its own. But then if 2 other people want to go off and do another film, that's great. Celebrate that. That's good stuff. The more films we can create, the more opportunities for all. So that's the way I would also kind of encourage people to run their operation instead of trying to get, 2 friends and they create a studio and then it's basically like a marriage. They're saying, okay, from here on out for the rest of our lives, this is what we're going to do. You don't know that all the time, right? And like I said, I've seen that play out to not be true. So I would celebrate the differences and celebrate doing different productions and being pulled in different directions. Allow people to kind of do that. Do your films as kind of one-off opportunities, and treat them like that. So yeah, those 2 things, that if you do those 2 things, I think you'll be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm trying to get more into, doing one-off stuff, because I've talked to you about my Doctor Who fan series and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to finish that up soon, because I'd rather just stick with one-off films or short films. But that's good advice. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for joining me today. Good advice, good conversation.
Yeah, and anything I could do to help, like I said, theforgestudios.com. You just go there, any social media stuff. If you have questions, reach out. I am looking to create some opportunities, and hopefully I will definitely do that. That's my goal for 2018, to level up.
All right, well, thanks for joining me.
All right, Jericho, have a good one.
You too.